Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you enjoyed the wonderful lunch we just had. My name is Zuzana Pundava, and I will be moderating the second panel of today that's called European Rights and Values in Practice, the National Perspective. Whereas the first panel focused on the bigger picture of the achievements and challenges of the EU citizenship that we are facing in the present days, in the second panel, we will look at the specific examples of how the rights and values associated to the EU citizenship are implemented at national levels. Our speakers come from organizations that are active in different specific areas of the citizenship rights, which touch upon the concept of active citizenship. And together today, we will explore in which areas there are issues with the implementation of the European law at national level and where there can be an improvement. But luckily, we will also hear about some success stories. And hopefully in the end of the panel, we will be able to come up with some specific recommendations for policymakers in the respective areas. To present you the speakers, I will start with ladies. On my right, we have Ms. Samia Badani. She is a director of campaigns at New Europeans from United Kingdom, and she is also a policy and advocacy consultant. And today, Samia will highlight the difficulties that the non-British EU citizens are facing when accessing the UK public services. Then we will have Mrs. Flora Graioni, who is Deputy Director of IREX Europe. And IREX Europe is one of our EU Impact Partners organization. Flora will be speaking about aid development in third countries and about unachieved goals by the EU member states. Then we will proceed to Ms. Elsa Laino from Solidar, which is a European network of NGOs working to advance social justice in Europe and worldwide. Today, Elsa will present results and recommendations from the Labour Citizenship Project, LABCIT, which deals with the promotion of decent wage and working conditions as a means for promoting the democratic participation of all EU citizens. And then we will start with our gentleman here. Next, we will have Mr. Carles Cervera, who is a coordinator of social department at Habitat 3 Foundation in Catalonia, Spain, which is a charitable foundation that aims at securing of social housing of people in need. And we will discuss with him about all aspects of social housing. Then we will have Mr. Mariano Vota, Director of Active Citizenship Network from Italy. ACN is also one of our EU Impact Partner organizations. And in his presentation, Mariano will tell us about patient rights in the framework of EU health policy. And our last speaker is Mr. Petko Georgiev. Petko is the chairman of the board of ProInfo Foundation, who is the leader of the EU Impact Project. Last year in May, the ProInfo Foundation organized a launching event in Sofia focusing on EU citizens in limbo. And today, Petko will present some recommendations and conclusions from the conference. After the presentations of the speakers, we will have a short Q&A session. And I would therefore like to remind you that it is possible to pose questions to our speakers via Twitter. All you need to do is tweet with the hashtag ActiveCitizenship24. And just a little reminder to our speakers, because we don't have that much time for each presentation, please try to keep it around 9 minutes long. So if it's going to be a little longer, please excuse me in advance for ruthlessly cutting you off in the middle of the presentation. Okay, and now I will hand our floor to the first speaker, which is Samia.
Thank you very much to the organizers for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to give a voice to these mobile EU citizens, which we are very much talked about and that sometimes, sadly, we don't hear about. So just by way of background, so you understand where I draw my experience in terms of telling you what the real issues are. I've worked in the voluntary sector for over 10 years now, and in the course of that work, I've dealt with over 21,000 inquiries, directly or indirectly. When I say indirectly, I would provide the advice and get somebody to do the legwork. And out of this number of inquiries, at least 17% was from EU citizens who came for issues about access to housing, employment rights, consumer issue, social security, family and relationship, lots of different issues. Furthermore, with New Europeans, we partnered with Volunteering Matters last year to deliver a Community Voices project, which was commissioned by the European Commission to look at the impact of EU migration on local communities and to promote that community dialogue between institutions, local organizations, local communities, and mobile citizens. So we ran a series of seminars all over the country, across the UK, in 6 major cities, Cardiff, London, Birmingham, Belfast, and Edinburgh, where we gathered representatives from the third sector, from the statutory sector, and of course EU citizens. And we had some interesting findings, notably in terms of access to health services. It was interesting to find out that actually it was underused. There was somehow a lack of understanding of EU citizens' rights to access health services. Some of them would prefer to access health treatment in their home country. So I'm not going to make any comments on the state of the NHS in the UK. And some of them actually were afraid of the stigma or of what we hear in the UK press, that EU citizens are health tourists. Oh, I forgot to say I'm an EU citizen, I'm a mobile citizen as well. We looked also in terms of schools, because one of the main issues or concerns, whether they are founded or unfounded from communities in the UK, is that migration had an impact on UK schools and the schools' capacity to integrate these children. And we find good example of practices where local authorities, schools, and the whole school community were trying to integrate those communities. But we did find that there was a bit more to do. And although we're all EU citizens, I think we shouldn't take it for granted that there's a need to welcome and integrate people and just making them part of the community. Now we have some more sinister findings in terms of the issues that EU mobile citizens would face, notably in terms of racism, hate crimes, and discrimination, especially in housing and in employment. Lots of EU citizens worked in terrible conditions with minimal, well, we know they have rights under EU law, but it was not always provided to them. Difficult housing situation where a lot of EU migrants were scammed or were promised a certain property which was in a dire state of disrepair, or living in multiple, with multiple occupants. What I want to say is that EU citizenship needs to be more than this abstract notion that it is mainly EU citizen, whether they're mobile or not. I think everyone agrees that there's a disengagement. There seems to be a gap between these EU citizens that we always refer to and EU institutions. But this disengagement mainly seems to be through a lack of understanding of the benefits attached to EU citizenship. I think it's fair to say that the UK has been marred by toxic debate over EU migration and the proliferation of myths which are without basis in saying that EU migrants take advantage. And I think we need to return to basic, and we need to think about the language we use. And I think mobile citizens do not take advantage, they benefit from the EU citizenship, and I think there's a lot still to do. But it's not just down to EU citizens, it's also institutions in member states, statutory organization in the member state. And I'm going to use an example which I hope will be telling. Once I represented a client, went to a tribunal, and I was faced with a judge, and she had the book, the UK legislation, and I was arguing the case for the client, and she looked at me saying, "Miss Badani, I don't know what to do, I can't change the law." And I was lost for words. I mean, EU law is there. This book, I appreciate you've got a book, but if you're a judge, surely you should know we are a member of the European Union and EU law prevails. So it got me thinking, what chance does a mobile citizen have if this institution that is there to protect your rights tells you, oh, I can't do anything, the UK law says this. But we did win the case. And I had actually another example with a different judge on the particular questions which I thought required the attention of the European Court of Justice. And I put my submission and I've explained to the judge that I wanted her to refer it to the European Court of Justice. And she was appalled by my request, saying, oh, I can't do that, we're a lower court. And even though I told her that she had the power to do it, it seemed to her that it was inconceivable for her to do that. So it seems to me that it's not just, the work is not just with EU citizens. I think there's a responsibility with member states to tell people, well, we do embrace our membership to European Union. It's not just an exercise, simply an exercise of us being part of the European Union. And of course, in that context, one can understand why we have the situation that we have now in the UK and why politicians find it very difficult to engage or to promote EU citizenship if the very guardian of the legislation or public services do hesitate or do make this distinction between domestic law and European law. I've changed my presentation yesterday night. I came back from work and because I've been in the community for a long time, and I had a phone call from a French national. She was very distressed. She explained to me that she had just been the victim of domestic violence. So I dropped everything, and because of course there are no targeted advice or advocacy services in the UK specifically for EU citizens. Although yes, you can access information. Yes, you can be sent to different organizations. You can be told what to do. But in terms of casework and having a person you can speak to, it's quite difficult. So I elected to do some pro bono work for her. And I've tried to explain to her she's an EU citizen and she's got certain rights. Now she's very concerned. She's got little children. Her son is doing really well. He's 7 and he's going for an exam today. If she decides to leave the abusive partner, she will not have access to social housing because of the right to reside. She will not get any help if she wants to access the private sector, and she won't get any means to support herself. Now her situation is that she's been in the UK for 4 years and a half. She's worked part-time. She had to stop, to give birth. But it's difficult to tell that this is what you need to do because I believe it's arguable. But it's one thing to say to people, you have a right, you can derive this, but it's something else to go through it. And I can tell you, she will be turned down and she will be homeless. So it seems to me that we have those concepts. We talked about permanent residence, and nobody started to think, okay, what about people who are nearly permanently resident? Is it right for her, who is settled in the UK, who are ties in the UK? Is it all right for her not to enjoy the same rights as British citizens? And it got me thinking, in the UK, if you're the spouse of a British citizen, and you will not have recourse to public funds, but the legislation recognizes that in cases of domestic violence, exceptions can be made. So you will have recourse to public funds. And it got me thinking yesterday night, well, if you're an EU citizen and we strongly fight domestic violence, we all believe in the same values, surely at some point a legislator or a policy maker should have thought about this eventuality. And this is, I think, the problem in terms of, on papers, yes, you have those rights, but it's really difficult to apply them. And what does she do? Does she take the matter to the European Court of Justice? She will not stick around to do that. And actually, her British partner told her, well, go back to France. And she sees as her only option. Now, it's her life, it's her decision. I strongly think that she needs to go for it. But it's a difficult choice, and I think it's about denying that from EU citizens. So I've got other examples. And I want to move on to the habitual residence test, which
you seem to be a little shorter because we're already running out of time.
I will try to.
I know you have a lot to say.
Okay. Well, the right to reside test is terrible in the UK. It doesn't work. They've gone further than that. They've said that for you to qualify as a worker, it's not enough for you to work. You've got to earn £155 a week. Now, EU legislation or case laws suggests otherwise. And on top of that, you can be a job seeker. You can have a right to reside so long as you can show after 6 months that you have genuine prospect of getting work. Now, what the government is saying is that, well, if you're a permanent resident, it won't apply to you. So if I go to the Commission and I say, well, actually, I've got cases of permanent residents who have to pass the test, and the government will say, no, our policy says otherwise. But if you look at how they pick up those cases, they don't have the means to make the distinction. So they look at the date you made your claim and 6 months later, and you will have to go through the test. So what do we do? Do I go to the Commission? What is it that I can do to prevent these people being denied their right? Because I think, yes, we can talk about enforcing people's rights, but there's a lot to do in terms of preventing that and trying to get institutions to actually look at the impact of the policy. Just one last thing. And I think in terms of, I fully agree with the recommendations that have been made. But I think what should be made mandatory, it's not enough for the Commission or for the institutions here to say, well, this is a directive, you need to implement it. Then you have the member states saying, well, this is our evidence, we've done it. I think it should be mandatory for the member state to conduct an impact assessment, to consult with EU communities, because you cannot shape policy without talking to people who are affected by policy. And I think that's the step we need to go further. That's it.
Thank you. So we just heard from Samia about a lot of examples of stigma and situation that the EU mobile citizens are facing in the UK. The situation is not ideal, but I really hope that the new Europeans will be able to influence the policymakers.
Well, if we stay in the
Yes.
European Union, I think so. That will be another debate.
All right, and now we will move to Flora.
Actually not, but thanks a lot, Samia, for your presentation. It was very interesting to know more about UK, and I mean, it's something that usually we don't cover, media do not cover. So, and I'm from France, but I'm not going to cover France because I work for an NGO in the development sphere. So I'm going to talk about. We actually work not with EU citizens, but mostly with citizens from third countries. But actually, this has direct linked with EU citizens because there are several projects funded by the EU, and also because in the last years, with the migration crisis, actually the link between migration and development aid has been stronger and stronger. First of all, it's important to stress that the EU official development aid, or ODA, including the bilateral contribution from the member states, represents the main contribution towards international support to development. And in 2014, actually, this amounted to $58 billion euros. Sorry. However, we are still far from the repeated commitment of the world's government to dedicate 0.7% of rich countries' gross national product to international solidarity efforts. This percentage was first decided in 1970 in a United Nations General Assembly, and it was then repeated over and over during several further conventions, including in 2002 during the International Conference on Financing for Development in Mexico. If we take now 2005, in that year, 15 EU member states agreed to reach the target, so 0.7% by 2015. And if we look at the numbers in 2014, only 4 of them were on track, and namely Sweden, Luxembourg, Denmark, and United Kingdom. Most of the others not only were not reaching the target, but actually were decreasing their support to the development aid. An example is France, which actually this year in 2016 compared to last year, decreased by 6.1% its official development aid. We can't not mention that last year was also important for development aid because it was the European Year for Development. Among the goal of last year was also to increase the awareness of citizens about the EU development aid, how it works, the achievement, and we can see from a barometer, that Eurobarometer, that was published in January this year, that some achievements have been done towards this goal. The survey also shows that in general the EU citizens consider development aid as a crucial tool. For example, 89% of the respondents say that it's important to help people in developing countries, and this is the highest level since 2010. 69% of them agree that tackling poverty in developing countries should be one of the main priorities of the EU, while only 50% of them say that this should be one of the main priorities of their own national government. So we can see the difference if they consider the EU institution or their own government. And finally, 52% think that the EU should keep its percentage promise, and a further 16% say that aid should be increased beyond what has been promised, so beyond the 0.7%. In 2015, as I said at the beginning, development aid and the situations of developing countries had also been more under the attention with the escalating migrant crisis. If we take, for example, the Eurobarometer that I just mentioned, 73% of the respondents agree that development aid is a way to tackle irregular migration. The migration crisis has also pushed the European Union and the Member States to rethink their international aid contribution, and many national aid budgets, as well as EU funds, are now being used to tackle the migration crisis, for example, strengthening border controls and fighting terrorism. This was actually confirmed because conclusions from an EU summit on migration, which happened last year in June, that states that development policy tools should reinforce local capacity building, including for border control, asylum, counter-smuggling, and reintegration. And this proposal was actually approved during EU-Africa Summit in Malta in November 2015. And what we can see from the perspective of the NGO working in development aid is that this new direction for aid spending is taking much needed money away from projects related to health, education, and food security in developing countries, but also from projects that are supporting democracy and human rights in these countries. We can see, like just 2 weeks ago, that the debate is still under high attention. In fact, the 28th of April, the EU MEPs had to adopt the budgetary discharge for the EDF, which is the European Development Fund, and the European People Party presented a measure to officially redirect up to 25% of the European Development Fund to measures to deal with migration. Fortunately, but this is my point of view, this last proposition was rejected by the cross-party majority, which strongly criticized the fact that European aid is increasingly being diverted to tackle the migration crisis. Of course, these are the decisions taken at the EU level, and we just need to see what each member state will do. And I think it's the role of NGO like us, working in the development sector, but also as the other EU impact partners, which work more with the citizens of the EU, to actually increase the education about development and to explain how it's why and how it's important to continue the support. As part of the EU Impact project, we had a debate, and actually the debate was focusing on migration and development aid, and what are the links and how this link is being instrumentalized by the politicians of a lot of countries. And at the end of the event, the majority of the audience agreed that, one, the development aid should not be used as bargaining chip to obtain agreements or concessions on area of strategic interest to the EU. Secondly, that it must not be linked to or conditioned by agreements on readmission, stronger border control, or stifling of mobility within African countries. And third, that in addition, official development aid should not be diverted to cover the cost of migrants in donors' countries. And this is it. Sorry, no very positive case.
just heard from Flora their French overview of the situation. I also think it was especially interesting to see what the EU citizens think about development aid in third countries and about where the finances should be allocated instead. Next presenter would be our third lady, Elsa. Thank you. Come closer to the table. We can all move.
Okay. Hello. First of all, let me thank the ECAS for the invitation to this to Solidar to this event. Maybe a few words about the organization for the ones of you who don't were maybe not familiar with Solidar. We are a network of 60 NGOs, and the network was created in 1948. The secretariat in Brussels is present in Brussels since 20 years. The members of our network are brought together by the shared values of solidarity, social justice. We work on equality, on promoting equal opportunities, and fighting any kind of discrimination. And in particular, let's say that our main focus is support to economic, social, and cultural rights all over the world, because we have a department working particularly on European issues, but we also have strong alliances and partnership with partners all over the world to work on development cooperation and lifelong learning and education. So it's quite a broad network, but the idea of the presentation today would be to add basically to the discussion another, in our opinion, a very important component of the set of rights included in the definition of EU citizenship, that are rights related to mobility and in particular labor rights. We have been involved, as was said during the introduction, in a project funded by the EU for Citizens program that is called LabCit. It means labor citizenship. And the idea of this project, that we ran together with some NGOs, some employment agencies, universities, and also lawyer associations, was to put the link between EU citizenship and labor citizenship on a test. And the test was quite hard, because what we tried to do was looking at very severe cases of labor right violations towards migrant mobile EU workers in 6 countries. We covered Czech Republic, Germany, Lithuania, Ireland, Italy, and Romania. And we have realized some specific country reports where all these cases of violations have been collected. We put together interviews for more than 250 migrant workers in the different countries that I just mentioned. And we also tried, of course, to promote ways forward towards, let's say, the strengthening of labor citizenship in the European Union, which is, in our idea, in our opinion, a cornerstone for the true realization of the European integration project. We think that this issue of freedom of movement and freedom of and all the economic freedoms that are linked to the freedom of movement should be counterbalanced by a very important basis for harmonized social rights and social protection for all EU citizens, in order not to for this if this balance is not present, then the very huge economic differences between member states become an excuse to, in a way, exploit this freedom of movement and put mobile workers into a situation of more vulnerability and then exploitation and labor right violation. So the cases that we looked at were also, and this is another element I would say, focused on very specific and hard working sectors, like meat production sector, which is already per se characterized by very hard working conditions. We looked for example, as well at the case of transport sector in Italy. And we have also produced, and this is something that maybe I can provide more information about later on, videos on where these interviews to the people who took part of the project were put together. So this is just to say that there is a lot in the project, and I won't be able in 10 minutes to go through, but I tried to make three general points about the key findings in order to then foster the debate for recommendations and way forward. The first finding is for us the fact that we here, especially for people here in Brussels, when it comes to the issue of EU mobile workers' rights, we are very much speaking about posting of workers because there is a directive that is under review. We made an attempt with the previous commission, and that didn't go through, and we are trying again to open the discussion on that. But in the findings of the project, we have seen that posting of workers is only one of the many and increasing indirect employment contracts that have been raising in the last years after the enlargement of 2004 and with the economic crisis in 2008 to, as I said, exploit the economic inequalities in the European Union, and basically have a cheaper labor. We have seen the cases of subcontracting, we've seen the case of temporary agencies, letterbox companies. So the main element there is that it is very difficult to find a transparent to see transparently how this subcontracting chain is composed. So one of the recommendations that is linked to this point is actually the one that our members in the project put together towards the European institution and national institution to create kind of liability chains. So to make sure that the European Union can push member states as much as possible towards direct employment contracts and use the indirect employment contract in a more regularized way. Then, for what concerns as well the situation of mobile workers, we have, I'm very much agree with with Ms. Badani, who explained the case of the UK on the different obstacles that. Thank you. Different obstacles for migrants, for mobile citizens. To this, when we come to the to mobile workers, there is something else to add. That is the fact that in many member states there is also a huge overlapping between sectorial labor law regimes. So the person who is experiencing a violation not only is, of course, as a barrier in terms of language access, but it's also very difficult to identify the stakeholders, his interlocutors, because there is a sectoral, there is a national, and then there is an European regulation. So there is room for improvement in terms of harmonization for the European institutions. Then maybe to come to our role as civil society organizations, as well, it is very important for us to continue working on raising awareness and also to fill in this gap of mistrust that at the end is perceived by the EU mobile worker that is not is very far from thinking about himself as a new citizen, but rather as a foreigner when he is working in another country. So there we have a strong role to play as civil society organization to also, for example, I said that from the side of Solidar because we are working very much closely with the trade unions, also to push the trade unions towards a more transnational way of working. That is not always the case. Maybe just to conclude, if I have 1 minute more, a promotion last message. We have, as you know, we did Solidar, the Silver Rose Award, which is an award we organize at the European Parliament, where we award champions of social justice in the civil society world. And this year, the date is 14th of June, we will organize the event in the European Parliament, and one of the awards this year is an organization working in the Netherlands called Fair Work, which is actually fighting cases of slavery. And you will be surprised about how many cases of slavery we have in the Netherlands, and about the fact that these cases of slavery also involves EU citizens. So that's it from my side.
Okay, thank you, Elsa, for informing us about the struggles that the migrant workers are still facing in the EU. Hopefully, your recommendation will open a debate with the policymakers and the situation will improve soon. We'll see. Our next speaker is Carlos.
Well, thank you very much for to recast to the project, and thank you for being here. I'm here to explain an initiative that is successful and is working right now in what we mean social housing. I'm going to talk about Catalonia, and as you know, it's a region of Spain, and for the moment, it's working. I titled the presentation Answer to Social Housing Needs of Citizens and from Citizens because we were born from down to top. Okay, we have behind more than 4,000 non-profit organizations. Also, we have social movements, and we try to construct from local to global. But we just work right now in Catalonia because we were born 1 year and a half. Here, I put some fundamental rights. That's the top. Or we're working for that, but as you know, life is not so wonderful, and less in Barcelona or in Catalonia, where we have a lot of housing problems. Okay, let's talk about the sector and why our instrument or foundation was born. The sector of social housing in Catalonia. When we talk about social housing, we talk about renting. It's just 2%, and the average in Europe is 15%. So we've been doing some calculations, and we need like 203,000 social and inclusive housing to get to the European average. Also, traditionally, this sector has been carried by the public and charitable sectors. And when we talk about the charitable sectors in Spain, we understand the church. Okay, so they were behind. And also, there is an increase in demand, as you know, due to social and economic and housing exclusion. So, due to all this, we had an opportunity. And we talk an opportunity, sociologists, we say that there is an structure of political opportunity after the crisis. Okay, it is a drama. We have social polarization and dualization, increase of relative poverty, decrease of middle class. That's a drama in Barcelona and in Catalonia. The city is getting dualized, but at the same time, we have a lot of social movements, like, for example, the Platform Against Housing Eviction. Actually, the mayor of the city of Barcelona right now comes from the whole political team, comes from this social movement. And all this citizen unrest, this political disorder, well, this untrust on political institution made the possibility for us to think about this instrument, okay, this foundation. And we were thinking first about the demand, but also we're thinking on suppliers. We have a lot of ways to gain or to have houses. We have the financial entities, more than or approximately 500,000 houses occupied. Well, they are not occupied, a lot of them are occupied. Okay, in Spain, for example, social services, when they cannot give a house to a person it's needed, they say to them that occupy and we will see. Okay, so we have a lot of problems. And also it's a service that we're doing for banks. So we have houses from banks, also from local and regional administrations. They have a lot of problems to go fast in giving houses to people, and also they have a lot of problems to regulate people without papers, for example. They get in the houses and they can do anything with them. So we try to regulate the contract situation. Also, we work with private owners. We help them because mostly working class owners that they don't have the money to put the the, the houses in the market. So we help them to put the houses in the market, and during 3 years we own these houses to give it to people in need, and also non-profit organizations. The man, as you know, local and regional administrations answers to citizen needs. Sorry. They are growing a lot, also to house eviction, and also to a lot of people that have from non-profit organizations that deal with people that have drug problems, people that have mental injuries, mental health, homeless. We try to give houses to them. So we need to offer and organize in a different way among those we have the responsibility. So, background, we do a research group and a study group for social and inclusive housing, and due to the context also, we create the instrument. It's a foundation, an NPO, okay, private status, and we work to all these non-profit organizations, and also to all the people that goes to social services and they have a housing picture. What we're doing right now, we born one year and a half, and we're creating new ways of collaboration. We work with everybody: public administration, non-profit organization, property administration, universities, financial entities. And we have to think that the non-profit sector in Spain doesn't like to work with banks, for example, or local administration doesn't want to talk with banks. And we say, no, they have, I mean, they have the product, so we need to talk with them. And I mean, we need the product to give an answer to citizens. So we're going to see and we want to talk and we're going to negotiate. Okay. So that was difficult, but we're creating and changing these business models. And also we're introducing these business models in the NPO sector. So we rent, we do concessions, we buy, we're buying. That's difficult. We're buying. We end building promotions too, and we work with NPO organizations for working insertion, and we try always to work with them. The Well, it's a little small, but that's the actors and the value change. Okay, 2 minutes. Um, the idea, like I say, we work with banks, local and regional administration, private owners, and we try to solve their problems. Okay, we have a bottleneck, the housing acquisition, so we're trying to focus on that. But the key of the model of our foundation is that we do something that nobody does. It's social and technical supervision and monitoring of the houses. So when citizens have a house, every 2 months, 3 months, more or less, we're there. We help them to pay. So there's an idea that all that the people have from the administration is like for free. They have to pay. Okay, they pay out, and 97% pay. So that's a lot. They don't pay the month in course. That's really difficult because they came from considerations. But I mean, at the end of the year, the 90% of the people pay. We have less than 5% of community conflicts. So we're saying that the model works. It works for the local administration, it works for NPO, it works for banks, and everybody has a little bit what they need. No? And the critical factor of success, well, social capital, we have behind a lot of entities and NPOs, know-how, creativity and innovation, where we're working in places that and doing things that nobody has done, like new contracts, new ways to manage building. Everything is new. The key is social and technical supervision and monitoring, like I said. Nobody does that. And what we're doing now is evaluation the impact and process of social investment. And we've seen that there are a lot of changes. Less than 5% of community buildings, 97% of families, they pay, okay? Not in time, but in 2, 3, 4 months. And also people, we're dealing with people that we give them, people homeless, for example, or people with drug problems. We're seeing that if we gave them a home, they are getting a job. And that's difficult, but 30% of the people is getting out of their situation. We can say that they are getting normality. I don't know how to say it, but because these people wants to pay, these people wants to get out of the situation, and that's what we do. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Carlos, very much. I enjoyed the presentation, but what I would like to share is that even before this panel today, we got to talk to Carlos, and he really told me that it works, that once you provide housing to those people in need, they really start a new life, which is something very priceless, and you really
we're trying
deserve
to
appraisal for
evaluate
that.
this, but it's working.
Yes. Just a simple thing as housing really changed someone's life.
We should swap our housing crisis. We have one, so maybe we can swap.
All right, now Mariano, would you like to start?
Thanks a lot for the invitation. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mariano Votta. I'm responsible for the European affairs of the Italian NGO called Cittadinanza Attiva. The translation means civic activism. And I'm responsible for the European branch called Active Citizenship Network. As Susanna said before, I will talk about the patient right from an European point of view. Also because we are engaged at European level and officially recognized by the European Commission DG Sante as one of the relevant stakeholders included in the health policy forum, a platform that included the relevant stakeholders in the healthcare area. So I don't know if I can manage myself slide or not. Okay, thanks. Probably it doesn't work.
I'll just do it for you.
Doesn't matter. Citizens' health is a core European policy. The European Union promotes a high level of health protection for European citizens, but as you know, the organization, the delivery of healthcare is a responsibility of each member state. The European health policy tries to overcome national policies to ensure that everyone living in the European Union has access to quality healthcare. This policy is implemented through the health strategy and concretely implemented by the third health program, started in 2014, it will be finished in 2020, that aim to improve people's health and reduce health inequalities in 4 key areas. One of them is the protecting citizens from cross-border health threats. To better explain to citizens their European health rights, next one, each year on the occasion of the European Patient Right Day, the European Commission publishes a list of 10 benefits the European Union brings to patients. This document gives an overview of some advantages European patients can get, including the ones underlined by the Directive of Cross-Border Care, the first directive that mentioned patient rights in the title, as I will explain later on. I will just talk about this document provided by the European Commission. For example, as European citizens, we can expect to receive health care when visiting another European country, to be reimbursed when we receive medical treatment in another European country under certain circumstances, to receive information, safety and quality standard in European countries, and so on. We can go ahead with the slide. Exactly, thanks. Let me now tell you what citizens can do and did as active citizens to better implement these rights. In 2002, Active Citizenship Network, together with organizations from 15 countries, established the European Charter of Patient Rights. It's at least 14 fundamental patient rights which each European country must protect and guarantee. It has become a reference for the European citizens' rights in healthcare and a milestone for other European charters. Just to do an example, now in Malta, the government is writing a national charter of patient rights that included the most of the 14 patient rights established in the European Charter on Patient Rights. This is an example of the citizen involvement in the public area at European level. Another example, the majority of these 14 rights are embodied within the Council conclusion of common values and principles in European health systems adopted in June 2006, and the directive on the application of patient rights in cross-border healthcare officially recognized two of these patient rights, such as the right of free choice and the right to information. Another example, this directive on cross-border healthcare established that member states shall ensure that the national contact point consult with patient organizations, healthcare providers and health insurance agency, recognize and enhancing also the principle of the European Charter on Patient Rights, namely the right to participate in policy making in the health area. So this is a very relevant point. The reinforcement of the patient right established at in the European Charter will become effectively only with the cooperation and commitment of all stakeholders in every European member state, for sure. For this reason, since 2007, Active Citizenship Network, together with the citizens and patient organizations across Europe, have taken the initiative to organize every year on the same day a European Patient Rights Day in all member states. And starting from citizens' organization is now in the European agenda, as the document produced by the European Commission already mentioned and testified. Last May 4th, it was celebrated the 10th edition at the European Parliament. The European Parliament last year officially endorsed the European Patient Rights Day and also officially recognized an interest group called European Patient Rights and Cross-Border Healthcare. It was launched last December. It is an interest group in which are included 24 members of the European Parliament. And they have decided to work together with civic and patient organizations because they understood that today also the European Parliament have the opportunity to play an active role in improving the protection of patient rights in the European framework. To monitor the concrete implementation of patient rights in Europe, over the years we have promoted a civic assessment involving 70 civic and patient organizations in 20 countries, as well as 23 ministries of health and 65 hospitals. Okay, now it's correct the slide. Great. Those are the principal results. In general, the low score average means a lack of respect of these rights. These negative results send a precise signal to the civic world and to the European institutions about the work still to be done. It's a difficult challenge which needs to be faced, a joint effort. But how much citizens know their patient right? Next one, thanks. If citizens don't know their rights, they cannot stand for them and above all exercise them. So according to Eurobarometer data published last year, indicates that less than 20% of citizens feel that they are informed about their cross-border healthcare rights. On these issues, what we have done thanks to this European project called WIMPACT, first of all, we have shared the result of the civic monitoring of the respect of European patient rights to present successful experiences from Malta, Hungary, Cyprus, France, Italy, Belgium, Spain on the issues of cross-border care, to define a common recommendation as well as a call to action aimed at raising awareness of patients' rights across Europe in a very pragmatic way. So, talking about the recommendation, the main is aimed to integrate different European policies. For instance, introducing rules on mediation, alternative dispute resolution already already done by the European Commission in different sectors, energy, telecommunication, now should be also included in healthcare sector. Number two, to integrate the principle of the cross-border directive in the context of the European mobility policy. Number three, to work together to better coordinate the different European agency and structure, Solvit, Your Europe Advice, National Contact Point, Europe Direct, European Consumer Center, because probably they collect many data but are not organized to better cooperate together. Starting from the experience of the European Consumer Center network promoted by the European Commission to manage cross-border issues in the consumer policy, to build an European patient center network with the direct involvement of patient organization. And now, just to finish, I want to present the call to action that we have decided to launch a communication campaign with the title Patient Rights Have No Borders. It's a communication campaign in 14 countries, among the others Austria, Bulgaria, Italy, Spain, France, Germany, and the others. Is mainly addressed to European citizens and patients of these 14 countries, but also to leaders or volunteers of civic and patient organizations. The campaign consists in a different initiative online on the spot, production of informative materials. You can see the communication document. As for the content, it's partially borrowed from the leaflet on cross-border healthcare already published by the European Commission. We received the authorization to use the document produced by the European Commission with three add values. Number one, information for patients affected by rare disease. Contact of the national contact point for each country, a contact of a national patient organization. And we believe that patients' rights have no borders, and that the cross-border health treatment is the missing piece of the puzzle to make Europe a true common house for everybody. And thanks for the attention. This one?
Okay, just one by one. Next to you. Next to you.
Ah, this one, sorry. Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Mariana, for your presentation. I think it was very interesting how you informed us about the EU patients' rights and cross-border directive. I think it's quite shocking how little percentage of the EU citizens actually know about their rights. But I really hope that thanks to your campaign, the number will increase so that citizens will get all the necessary information.
Next year we try to reach the other 14 countries.
Oh, perfect. Good luck with that. And our last speaker today is Petko Georgiev.
Thanks. I hate to be the obstacle between you and the coffee break, so I'll keep it. I'll keep it very, very short and very practical. my topic is EU citizens in limbo, which means EU citizens that are trying to exercise their guaranteed rights somewhere in another country and are facing discrepancies with the local legislation. I wish I knew some of you before we started this project, because we would have probably achieved more. I was especially interested in your experience, also in what John was so um, passionately talking about this morning. But you know, this is the kind of people who are faced in a situation where their future employer wants them to have a social security number, and the social securities will only give them that number with the employment contract. So there is nothing you can do about it. The one wants the other to sign up first, and nobody wants to take the decisive step. Or coming to Belgium and trying to sign a contract for a mobile phone. It's impossible until you have a residence permit. So anybody coming for business to Belgium to work with the institutions ends up paying 3 times more for mobile phone charges for calls and for the internet. Same thing about trying to rent a house or getting your residence permit. Nobody mentions, and it's not such a huge hassle, but every now and then, if you move from country to country, you have to change your driver's license. Why on earth is that? Now, in theory, you are a European citizen, you have a driver's license which is valid everywhere in the world, but then in a few months, the police knocks upon you at your door and they say, well, we don't recognize your French driving license anymore, you need to have a Belgian one. And once you're moving to another job, then your Belgian driver's license is no longer recognized, and you need a Spanish one, and so on and so on. So it's basic things which are happening every day. Nobody even thinks about that being a contradiction with European citizenship. So we've all been trying one approach: talk to our MEPs, talk to our national politicians. But then, what can a Bulgarian politician do about enforcing a Bulgarian laborer's rights in the UK a month before the referendum? Exactly nothing. And that's not much more than what the Commission can do about it. Nobody wants to embarrass the UK.
No, please. Very tight. Don't say a word.
So that avenue is blocked. We can't do anything about it. Even though here between us, I think we share access to some 300-400 MEPs, yeah? We come from 10, 12, maybe different EU member states. Among us, we have probably 400, 500 MEPs to who we can address an appeal. And we do, every now and then. This is what EU Impact has been doing. But it has a limit to where it goes. So one thing that I would like to suggest and to explore maybe in the next panel after the coffee break is there something that we can do as citizens, peer to peer, explain to our fellow European citizens in another country that we are not a threat to them, that we have not come to take away their pensions or their social security rights, but the other way around, we can contribute and we can share and we can all be stronger together, so that a national politician is not faced with anonymous pressure about our rights coming from Brussels, but from the understanding and solidarity of his own citizens, people who are his future electorate again. So we work on the informal level, on the peer-to-peer level, enforcing citizens to recognize their rights at home as the rights of everybody else who is living in their country or is planning to move abroad. So I think there is a need to work on both fronts, the institutional and the peer-to-peer. So let's talk about this after the coffee break. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Petka, for sharing your views with us. I would like to now open the floor for the questions from you.
Where is the coffee?
The coffee is at the back. Yes, question number 1. Would you like a microphone?
It's not a question, it's
So that it can also be part of the recording.
All right.
Thank you very much. Oh, shoot.
All right. We'll be back to you.
Yeah, hello. My name is Arne Lange from the Heinrich Böll Foundation. But I have a question which is not directly related to my work. It's just that I heard a lot of times that people are not aware of their rights, and that you said a shocking low percentage of people who know their patient rights in different countries, and I think it's a little bit idealistic to think that all citizens should know of or have to know about all their rights in different countries, and because nobody was going to do that. I mean, a person who just wants to work or wants to travel to different countries is not going to go through all the EU legislation to pick up all the rights they have. And even though it's made available now through very easy channels, I mean, we have to think that most people are not. It's not normal to prepare yourself for a job in a different country by going through this whole stuff of legal advice that you can have. And although it's available, people don't use it. We have to realize that, and it's normal not to use it because it would take a lot of time. So I think we have to think about other ways to bring a message across or to foster this citizenship, because you can't expect from even me. I studied European studies and I'm working here, and I didn't. Of 90% of the rights that I heard of that I have today, I heard here for the first time. And I'm working here, and I studied this, and so it's for a person who just wants to do different normal job in a different country. It's impossible, and we have to realize that it's not going to happen like this as well. So maybe there are other ideas and other channels with how to do it. Thanks.
Would anyone like to react to that?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I
Go
had
ahead.
my 9 minutes, or 1 minute more. I think I'm going to slightly disagree with you. I believe all EU citizens should know their rights. But the question is whose responsibility it is. And it's certainly not your responsibility. And it's finding ways for the EU Commission's institutions, but also member states, to take ownership of that. Because in terms of, for you to understand what your EU citizenship means, somebody has to take responsibility and explain that to you. It shouldn't be left to us, civil society, to try and raise awareness. Somebody has to take a responsibility to inform, to educate. Like in some country, you do citizenship classes. So we should take it, that is compulsory, because we are citizens, and nobody's, I don't like the word educating, but nobody's explaining. And it shouldn't be down to poorly resourced third sector voluntary organization to work sometimes on a pro bono basis, trying to motivate people, raise awareness. It should be people who are actually selling this EU citizenship.
Just to add something about patient rights, the directive on cross-border healthcare was established in 2011. Yes, so it's not a long time in order that citizens in general are aware about the new right introduced by this directive, the right to go abroad for care, okay, for planned care, not for the emergency, for planned care. Okay, so the question was focused especially on this new right introduced in 2 years ago, because the implementation of in the national member state was at the end of October of 2013, and many countries, including mine, Italy, waiting much more time in order to adopt the national law who implemented the directive. So this is one of the answer about your suggest that I agree about you.
And we have a question by Christina, and then by the gentleman.
No, it's more than a question, it's a comment on the challenge of information. I have been working, I think, for more than 10 years from the institutions to have information which is understandable and which is practical and don't leave people in the limbo. But there are a lot of strands on the information, you know, and we cannot tackle neither alone on the institutions, alone with the NGOs. One of the things is that the right of information has to be in the legal text. So for you, the activists and the NGOs, you have to push for making the right of information an article. It's not just to say that the administration should cooperate and it would be nice and they should inform. No, they have to, because if it's only left to very loose way of saying it, then it is not enforceable. And when people will come to the Commission to complain that, okay, there is no information or whatever, yeah, there is no article. There is no article. It is not in law. So it makes it very difficult for the Commission, if it wishes to act, to act on that. So that's a good message. And about the limbo, I mean, I work also in Solvit, which is a problem resolution, an informal problem resolution. And I know so many cases of limbo, like the European Health Insurance Card. You have the rights, so the gap between what is written in paper, the rights, and and what happens on practice. Like, okay, yes, European Health Insurance Card. Everybody having a European Health Insurance Card can go to another country and get the same treatment, a necessary and urgent treatment in the other country. Yes, but if you happen to have this, you have first to inquire whether this hospital is really a public hospital, because if it's a private hospital, then it doesn't apply. In Germany, the doctors, are not they can be working in a public hospital, but they are all in a private contract. It was amazing. In Spain, in our Barcelona, for example, the Hospital del Mar says that one particular treatment is private. How in hell somebody can come to the hospital, as far as I know, this is a public hospital, but some treatments are private, and precisely those who are being used by mobile citizens. So there is a lot of in the gap. And just one thing that surprised me about what Petko said, as far as I know, the driving licenses are recognized, and you don't have to exchange your driving license unless it expires, but not that they are not recognized. This is one of the good things. Ina? Is it true?
Can I just say something? Yeah. Because the information in the UK is different. And I think that's the problem.
Okay, information again.
See, this just proves that we all have different kind of information.
I find it very interesting and fascinating because, in a way, all of us, we are very different agents, let's say. Starting from our head of a citizen to our head as an NGO, then either if you work into a service providing NGO or a commission or whatever. And what strikes me is that actually, no matter how one of those agents do their job well, it will never be enough unless everyone else do it right as well. Because in a way, whatever the Commission does, they cannot do what we can do. Or if I'm ignorant as a citizen about my rights, then it doesn't matter how ideal your portal is, if I never make the effort to go there. And this is also something which I think very much linked to our culture as citizens and behavior as citizens. For me, it's totally unthinkable that I will go to another country without studying in advance what I'm going to find there. But this is like me because I'm like this. However, I totally agree with what the colleague said, just because a very close friend of mine who has been living in France for 6 years find himself in limbo just because he didn't ever care to understand what he's doing while working there. So now he's not able to claim his pensions rights. And they are very different people, but this is also a question of culture and of citizens' culture. And therefore, I think really that also here the role of schools and of universities and of educational institutions is very, very important in this. Not only to, in a way, submit to you the information that you need, because as a matter of fact, it's impossible. Information is so broad on every topic that, yes, it can exist everywhere, but no one can pour it in your head, you know, like this. So they also have to educate you of the fact that you should be curious about your own status and inquire it proactively in a way.
I just hope the battery doesn't die on me. Okay, this is a contribution from Deirdre Casey. She's currently working with ICAS on some projects across the Balkans. And then good girl, thank you. She raised 3 points here. She says that the issue of awareness is a huge one. And, I'm just going to read as she has it. She says, in terms of raising citizens' awareness about rights and improving enforcement of citizens' rights, I think that the Commission should have a budget line for information, advice, and advocacy services. We see CSOs in national member states assessing these budgets. She said that this is particularly important in the context of lengthy and unclear administrative procedures, which make it difficult for citizens, especially mobile citizens, to assess their entitlements. She goes on to say something about, she says, it's good that the Commission currently funds the EU rights clinics, which ECAS provides in member states. So she thinks it's a good place to start. And then she goes on to say that in terms of obstacles to assessing rights, she says, I think the person or number report provides good examples of barriers faced by migrants in assessing social protection in Ireland. The fact that the DSP has finally agreed to implement their own guidelines in relation to interpretation services may be one of the positive outcomes of this report. And then finally, she says, I think that training for national administrators on EU citizens' rights is really important, as we are certainly seeing a lot of confusion and contradictory information from government departments in relation to those rights. So that, and she says, she wishes us well. Thank you.
We have time only for a few more questions.
It's just, it's more like a suggestion, like for information to get across, you have to send it to people where they are. If you really want about a citizen's rights as an European, you can actually work with existing tools, like in every state there is public television. You can get things across through public television. I don't know, eventually you can be very creative by making a sort of European soap opera where all these kind of issues come aboard and people get involved, make it very, very attractive. There are means, but they're not used. If you laugh, but if I look even at Euronews, I get a lot of news, but I don't get anything out of what we said today here. There are so many things that should be used, which we are not using today as European citizens and as European Commission or government. And it's not only about budget; it's purely about taking the initiative and go for things. Right? It's often that, and you have to believe also in the European ID, and that's the other thing which I missed a little bit today. But even in the European administration, there are people, I met them, that are very critical towards the European Union. And that's a problem. We got to also try to convince them within the European Union to work along with us. And that's not an easy thing to do. That's very, very difficult as well. So I just wanted to say that. Hope it wasn't too confusing.
No. There's one last question over there.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Aida Barquero from Fundación Ciudadanía. And the thing is that what I wanted to remind all of us is one of the principles in law, that ignorantia juris non excusatio. Because the thing is that, okay, we have the right to be informed, but the thing is that not knowing the law does not allow us not to obey it. So the thing is that, as Samia said, I think that we need better tools, as she said and other panelists said. We need another educational tools, non-formal and formal educational activities, as we'll see in the next panel. We'll talk a bit about that. But the thing is that we need a clear message, because the law, let's say, all the normative is there, and we need that tools, that especially non-formal activities, just to get to teenagers, to that public that is especially difficult. But I mean, there is no point, from my point of view, there is no point of saying, well, we have the right to be informed, but we're not informed. Well, the thing is that we don't have the right of that excuse. Ignorance is not an excuse. So, yeah, it was just a thought.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank all of the presenters for excellent contributions, and also the audience for well-targeted questions. I can see that some of you still want to debate a little bit about these topics, but please, exactly, feel free to discuss it with our speakers over the coffee and into your coffee break. Thank you very much.